Welcome back, true crime fans, to the Crime 11 podcast. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to go deep.
Okay, good. So this time we're looking into the Midtown torso killer.
Oh, right, Richard Cottingham.
Richard Cottingham, yeah.
That case is fascinating. A total Jekyll and Hyde situation.
I know, right? Family man by day, brutal killer by night.
It really makes you wonder, what could push someone to do those things?
For sure. And that's what we're going to try to figure out during this deep dive. But before we go too deep, I think it's important to kind of paint a picture of where all this happened, like set the stage.
Absolutely.
So we're talking Times Square in the 70s.
Oh, wow, yeah.
A completely different world than what it is now. Like, forget the tourists and the flashing billboards. Back then, it was all kind of gritty streets, X-rated theaters,
Right.
and just like this underlying sense of danger.
It was the perfect hunting ground for someone like Cottingham.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really was, and it kind of explains how he was able to get away with so much for so long. And his crimes, they didn't actually start with murder, did they? Like, he had a whole history of petty theft, drunk driving, even sexual assault. It's like he was climbing this ladder of violence, each crime getting worse than the last.
You see this a lot with serial killers. They start small, test the waters, then they escalate, getting bolder each time.
So it's a pattern.
Yeah, almost like they need to push the boundaries further and further.
Especially what they can get away with.
Exactly. And with each crime, they get more desensitized to the violence, and their need for power just grows.
It's a really scary thought.
It is. And with Cottingham, there's this one place that keeps popping up. The Quality Inn Motel in New Jersey.
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
He took victims there over and over. Can you believe it? He even left one victim's body in the parking lot and still kept going back.
Like he was invincible or something. No fear of consequences.
Yeah. And then, December 1979, things took an even darker turn. 2 burned and dismembered bodies were found at the Travelodge in Times Square.
The torso killer.
Right. Heads and hands were missing. Clothes all neatly folded in the bathtub.
It was horrific.
Absolutely brutal. What gets me is how meticulously he tried to hide their identities, taking the heads and hands. It wasn't just about the violence, it was calculated.
Like he was trying to erase them completely. And he was doing other things too, right?
Yeah.
Altering his work records, creating fake alibi.
He was smart, organized.
Scary combination.
Definitely. So here we have this seemingly normal guy, family man, living this dark double life. Then, boom, the torso killer emerges. You almost wonder if something snapped, like he just lost it.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But I guess when you look at the escalation of his crimes,
Yeah, you have a point.
maybe it wasn't a sudden break, but like a slow descent into darkness. And the Travelodge murders were just the horrific peak of that descent.
Exactly. It was all building to that point.
But there was one victim who managed to get away, right? Leslie Odell.
Oh, right, yeah.
She was forced into sex work and ended up with Cottingham at that same Quality Inn. Such a horrifying story, but she survived.
Incredible courage she showed. To be trapped like that and still fight back.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
Imagine being in that motel room knowing what he was capable of. She had to be terrified.
Absolutely. She was staring death in the face, but she didn't give up. She fought back with everything she had.
A real testament to the strength of the human spirit.
It really is. It gives you hope, knowing that even in the darkest moments, survival is possible.
Right.
I think it's also a powerful reminder for all of us to be more aware of our surroundings, to pay attention to those subtle cues, to those silent cries for help, because you never know who might be trapped in a nightmare right in front of you.
Couldn't agree more. Sometimes being observant can be the difference between life and death. And as amazing as Leslie's story is, we can't forget that not all of Cottingham's victims were so lucky. When they finally searched his house, they found that locked room, his trophy room.
Ugh, trophy rooms.
Yeah.
I always find those so disturbing. Like, what is it about collecting these grim souvenirs that appeals to serial killers?
I don't think it's really about the souvenirs themselves. It's more about the power they represent,
Oh.
For Cottingham, that room, it was like a shrine to his control over his victims. Each piece, a shirt, a photo, whatever it was, it represented a life he took.
A life he ended, like a twisted museum almost.
Yeah, exactly.
But the investigation, it didn't end with those trophies, did it? He actually confessed to killing Nancy Vogel.
Oh, right. The young mother found strangled in her car back in '67.
Yeah, that one. It really changes the timeline, doesn't it? Makes you think he was at this a lot longer than anyone initially thought.
And it shows how dedicated some investigators are. Like Detective Anzalotti, he spent years visiting Cottingham in prison, just chipping away at him, trying to get him to confess.
And he did confess eventually.
To even more murders, Marianne Jean Rayner, Diane Cusick.
Yeah, those cases are brutal. I mean, what could drive someone to do such horrific things? Was there a specific type of victim he went after?
Well, there are some commonalities. A lot of his victims were, women who were living on the margins of society, often involved in sex work.
So vulnerable women?
Exactly. But some seem to be more random, maybe chosen on a whim, or to fit some kind of twisted fantasy he had. It's a puzzle.
A puzzle we might never solve.
Probably not, no. And then there's Jennifer Weiss.
Oh, right, the daughter of one of the victims from the travel lodge.
Yeah, her. She actually started visiting Cottingham in prison, trying to, I guess, understand why he killed her mother.
It's hard to imagine having that much courage to sit across from the man who took your mother from you.
I know, and who knows if she ever really got the answers she was looking for. But I guess even a small piece of information, a little bit of understanding could help.
Or maybe it's just the need to confront evil face to face,
Yeah.
to find some kind of meaning in all the chaos.
Maybe so. But Cottingham, he didn't stop with those confessions. He claimed to have killed over 80 people.
80. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, how many families are out there still wondering what happened to their loved ones?
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? All those potential victims, just gone. No answers, no closure for their families.
It's heartbreaking.
And it's a reminder that the impact of these crimes goes way beyond the victims themselves. It ripples out, touches everyone they knew.
A whole web of pain and loss.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the advancements in DNA technology. It's helped solve so many cold cases. Maybe with time, some of Cottingham's other victims will finally be identified.
Some kind of closure for their families.
Right.
So we have this image of Cottingham, this complex, terrifying figure who operated for decades, leaving behind just a mountain of shattered lives. But what can we learn from a case like this? I mean, how do we even begin to make sense of such senseless violence?
That's the question, isn't it? We can study the evidence, we can analyze the patterns, but the human mind, especially one like Cottingham's, it's ultimately a mystery.
A mystery that might never be fully solved.
Right. But that doesn't mean we should stop trying to understand.
Yeah, some mysteries are just too deep, I guess. But there are some glimmers of hope in this whole thing. We talked about Leslie Odell and, her survival. But there's also the work of investigators like Anzalotti, who never gave up. They were determined to get justice, no matter how long it took.
Yeah, you got to admire their dedication to
Yeah.
keep pushing, keep digging, even when it seemed like all hope was lost. That's commitment.
For sure. And what about the families of the victims? I mean, how do they ever move on after something like this, knowing their loved ones were taken so brutally?
It's got to be tough. The grief, the anger, the not knowing.
Mhm.
It's a lot to carry. But, there are resources out there for them, organizations that can help families cope with the trauma, navigate the legal system.
Because they're not alone.
No, not at all. There's support out there, people who understand what they're going through.
That's good to know. But I guess in the end, we're left with that big question, aren't we? What makes someone like Cottingham tick? What turns an ordinary person into a monster?
Right. And it's a question that's been asked about every serial killer, what makes them do it?
Nature versus nurture and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Is it something they're born with? Or is it something that happens to them? The truth is, there's probably no easy answer. It's likely a whole bunch of things, all mixed together.
A perfect storm of badness.
In a way, yeah. But even though we might never fully understand why, it's important to keep asking the questions, to keep trying to figure out what makes these people tick.
So we can maybe stop it from happening again, right?
Exactly. But, as we wrap this up, it's important to remember one thing. The victims. Their stories need to be told. Their lives, their memories, they should never be forgotten.
Well said. So there you have it, folks. Another deep dive into the dark side. Richard Cottingham, the Midtown Torso Killer. A terrifying case, a complex mystery, and a reminder that evil can lurk anywhere.
But remember, there's good in the world, too. People fighting for justice, people helping those in need.
Right. And, as always, if you're interested in learning more, we encourage you to do your own research, explore the case further. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of stories waiting to be told.
Just be careful out there.
Yeah, stay safe. Until next time, true crime fans.
See ya.